Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
We're going to be talking about some amazing new piece of equipment for your EV next on In Depth. Hey Jesse, I think I know of a way to take this Ford F-150 Lightning, which normally feels like a Leaf, and turn it into a Cybertruck.
What do you mean?
I'll show you.
So what do you mean that the Ford F-150 Lightning feels like a Leaf? I mean, it's a pickup truck.
I know, and it has 300 miles of range, but basically I've been afraid to go more than 150 miles because I didn't know I could get home. So I just kind of drew a circle around the house, and then I went, if it's more than 150 miles away, I'm not going there in this truck, right? I mean, you remember the times that I didn't want to do it. And then we got this, which is the Vortex Plug from Lectron, and then we started going on all these adventures.
And that's because we've been able to supercharge at Tesla Superchargers, and we don't have to rely on the unreliable Electrify America stations and the EV Go stations that have been broken so many times and have let us down so many times in the past. I
mean, we almost didn't launch our Now We Adventure channel last year because we were waiting for the Cybertruck, and we thought without the Cybertruck we can't go do all these adventures. But then when we got this, we were like, oh, now we can actually go on all these adventures. And I feel like it's opened my mind, and it's also let me see what the problem is with non-Tesla EVs, which is they don't know what they don't know.
And I mean, that's true of everybody and everything. You don't know what you don't know.
Right. I mean, I remember talking to so many people who bought, for instance, Bolts, and they would say to me, you know, the thing I hate about this is I can't really go on road trips. I can't go on overnights unless I really plan it and I find a hotel that I can charge overnight.
And then I would say, oh, well, then you should get the Model 3. And this is before the Model 3 came out. And they said, oh, but I heard it's only going to have 215 miles of range. That's less than my Bolt. And I said, but you could supercharge it. And they went, well, I don't know. And that's because they weren't used to charging it, because you think to yourself, you know, when you buy the car, you either think that you can charge it or you can't. And then you very quickly figure out that it's not a great idea to rely on a fast charging network, which means that you can top up, right, on a trip that you normally would have done inside your bubble. But breaking out of the bubble is a much scarier experience.
Well, you know what? We need to charge up the Ford, so let's just go do it.
All right, so the first part about supercharger etiquette, especially if you're driving a Ford F-150 Lightning, is to park as far to the right as you possibly can at the supercharger. Now, the reason for this is that all Teslas have their chargers on the left-hand side and in the rear, so they'll all back in. The Ford, however, has its charger on the left-hand side in like the front quarter panel. That means that you're gonna be charging kind of on the wrong side. And if you parked somewhere in the middle, you'd be blocking more than one stall. As opposed to just blocking one stall, the stall that you're charging at, you would normally be blocking multiples. By parking here, we aren't blocking this, which is where the car would have parked. There's no other supercharger beyond this. And then when we plug in, normally it would be a Tesla right here, but instead it'll be the Ford right there. But that keeps all the other stalls open.
And Jesse, that's a really good point, that you have to, you know, as a non-Tesla driver, try and make sure that you understand the rest of the supercharger. But let's talk to the Tesla drivers for a second here. It's not Ford or GM or Toyota or any of these other EVs' faults in a way, because Tesla decided to make their cables really, really short. If you've been to other chargers, you know that normally you're not stuck after, like, what is this, 4.5 feet? Usually you've got a few more feet to play with. In this case, that means you have to keep your charger within this radius, and that's a pretty short radius. So if you are a Tesla driver, just understand that when a Ford or something pulls in like this, it's because we had no other choice.
Now, if you're a Ford or a Rivian owner, and pretty soon GM and all the rest of them, hopefully your car company will be sending you one of these adapters, which is really great. The only problem is Ford and Rivian have said that we will send you an adapter. And we've gone through all the steps to have it sent to us, and it still hasn't arrived. And now it's like June, and we still haven't gotten it. So it's a real big pain, and we decided, you know what, I'm not gonna wait. I'm not gonna let this summer go to waste waiting for some, you know, adapter that may or may not get here. So we got ourselves a Vortex Plug from Lectron, and that's what we're gonna be using today to supercharge this Ford F-150 Lightning.
All right, so for those non-Tesla owners who are wondering how this works, what did you have to do?
So I don't have the Ford Plug Pass app working yet. It's been, you know, we had one little hiccup, which has caused a cascade of errors in Ford's system. So I've just been using Tesla's system. Right now I'm pulling 170 kilowatts, which is pretty good because we're at 62% state of charge. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, all you have to do is go into your Tesla app, click on the hamburger menu in the top right-hand corner, then go to charge your other EV, and you select which supercharger you're at, which stall. I selected 2D, and then it basically initiates the charging session and you get charging. It's faster than an EA station.
Now, how did you know, we're in Templeton, Mass right now, how did you know that this charging station, a supercharger, would work with a Ford?
Exactly the same steps. No matter where you are in the world, if you're at the supercharger or before your trip, you would go onto your Tesla app, you'd click on the hamburger menu, go to charge my other EVs, and it'll show you which ones specifically you are allowed to charge a non-Tesla EV at.
Okay, so if you get to a supercharger and let's say there's just a lot of cars here and there's a couple open spots, is there any spot that's better or worse?
The best spot for this particular vehicle is going to be this one all the way at the end. It means that if a Tesla were to park here, they can't charge, but it's basically like we're parked here because we're using this charger. Teslas can use all the rest of the chargers, and so that's great. If we were to have parked here, then we would have been using this supercharger handle, and that supercharger stall would be useless because if a Tesla came in to pull in, they wouldn't have been able to pull in this space, which they need to charge at that stall.
But essentially, a lot of non-Tesla EVs are going to use up 2 slots.
Unfortunately, that's just the way that those manufacturers decided to make their vehicles. They, I guess, never thought that the Tesla Supercharger network would be the winner, because nobody thought that, except for me. Everyone said, whoa, there's gonna be a standard someday. And the standard was Tesla, of course. But I just wanna reiterate, people who bought these cars were not the people who designed these cars, for the most part. Jim Farley very rarely drives his Ford F-150 Lightning, so you can definitely take it up with him, but most Ford drivers didn't have any say in that, so picking on them or making a fuss about it isn't going to really get anybody anywhere.
But I've heard a lot of Tesla owners say that they're really worried that once the Bolts come, because Bolts have this unique problem, right, where they only charge at 50 kilowatts versus, like, right now you said we're charging at what, 150?
170.
So, right, so 3 times plus.
Yep.
So a Bolt is going to max out at 50, and it has a pretty big range, a pretty big battery, so it's going to sit there for potentially hours.
It would be, what is it, like an 80-ish kilowatt hour battery, maybe 70 something?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be that bad, but yeah, you could be there for an hour plus.
So, I mean, if a bunch of Bolts were at a supercharger, which that'll happen soon once GM is allowed, later this summer or early fall.
Yep.
Couldn't it be that they are here 3 times longer than Teslas, and so therefore they're taking up way more space?
I would hope that Tesla would sort out some method of disincentivizing long supercharger stays. The good news would be these Bolts are probably not going to be charging up to 100%, so an hour would probably be the longest that most Bolts would want to stay here for.
So Jesse, I don't know if you think this is a good possible solution, but like right now, Tesla has allowed non-Tesla EVs at certain superchargers. What if at a supercharger like this one, which is a, what, 8 stall? If say 4 of the stalls were open for non-Tesla EVs and Teslas, but then the other 4 stalls were exclusive Teslas. That way, if you got here, you knew at least that, like, even if there's 4 Bolts, you would at least have a few stalls that are only for Teslas.
Yeah, I think that that could be a potential solution. I don't think it's going to be a problem, if I'm being honest. There are so many superchargers throughout the world these days that there could be certain choke points where it might get a little too bolted. The superchargers might get completely bolted. But I think that the good news is most Bolt drivers have gotten used to charging at home, charging into EA stations, and while they may be getting their NACS adapters, I think that it's going to be a long time coming before all Bolt owners decide that they're all going to supercharge all in the same day. This will mean that on peak days like Thanksgiving, Christmas, that kind of time frame, it could get extra full. But that's why the Tesla Superchargers are so important and why they need to keep expanding.
So Jesse and I just went on a bike trip. You might be able to see the e-bikes back there. We got our Now We Adventure shirts on. The only reason we're doing this in that truck is because of the Vortex Plug. And you might be like, what are you talking about? Well, it was a long drive from home base to do this trip, and I wouldn't have done it in this truck if I couldn't reliably charge it. And the problem is, in Massachusetts at least, and many states, you can't reliably fast charge, because if there is an EA charger, if you're lucky enough to have a fast charger somewhere, you don't know if there will be charging there. The stalls could be taken, chargers could be broken. And so I've only felt comfortable going outside of this radius since we've gotten the Vortex Plug. Now I feel like this truck is almost like a Cybertruck, in the sense that I can use lots and lots of Tesla Superchargers. Not all of them, but a lot of them, enough to make it so that I don't have to worry about it. And I think that's the magical thing about this Vortex Plug. This $200 addition to the Rivian or the Ford, to me, makes it a completely different truck. And I think that is what's going to open this up for a lot of EV drivers. Until you have this plug, you don't really understand how awesome supercharging is. And so if I'm talking to you, if I'm talking to a non-Tesla EV driver who's never been to a supercharger, I get it. Why would you have been at one? You don't know how magical these places are. We just pulled up right now. We knew that they'd all be working. We didn't have to check anything. We didn't have to worry. There's no screens that are blue screened. Everything's just working. And that's what you're going to find. I mean, there's a 99.97% uptime with Teslas this year. And that's amazing, because EAs, I don't think, even approach 90%. So I think for a lot of you, it's going to open up a whole new style of driving that you weren't aware of before. And I think it's not worth waiting unless you have it in hand now. I mean, a couple people I know have actually gotten theirs from Ford, but for the majority of them, a lot of them are made by Tesla in Buffalo, New York, and I don't think they're going to be able to make them fast enough. So that's why we're talking to you about Vortex. I'm like, this thing is UL listed. It's really well made. I feel really confident using it. And now it just makes it so that my truck is worth a whole lot more to me. All right, so while the Ford's charging, I mean, I just want to say a lot of people are in this really tough boat right now. They've been told, probably by an email from Ford or GM or Rivian, whoever their car is made by, that like, don't worry, one of these is coming. And so you're like, great, but you already own the car. So what are you waiting for? Like, your waste every day that you can't supercharge, to me, is you're not really fully using your EV the way you should. You're now still worried about range. And there's, oh my God, I don't know where to charge.
It would kind of be like if you bought a smartphone and they're like, don't worry, email is coming. And you'd be like, great. But I can't use email.
We're going to get you a free email address in 2 years.
I can still make phone calls. I can still do a whole bunch of other things. But and you're like, do I just get a separate email account kind of thing?
Well, and I just want to mention, so Rivian, Ford, we own those two. We're actually, it's day one I got on the list, and we still haven't received our free adapters.
Yep. And some people have, and that's so great. I'm so happy for you. But we haven't.
Right. And I honestly thought, well, there's no options. And that's why I was so glad when, Lectron called us up and was like, hey, do you want to try out our Vortex Plug? And I'm like, yes. And then I was so surprised that it actually works really well. Like, there's been no problem with it at all. So I'm just telling you guys about this because, first of all, you can use our referral code and get a special discount. So go do that if you need one. And also, I mean, is it worth a couple $100 to not waste this next, whatever it is, summer, fall, winter, or more? I think so. I mean, depending on what your plans are. I just wouldn't want you to have to actually have to stop your trip in the middle, rent a hotel just because you couldn't make the next leg. Right. It'll actually probably save you money. Yep. And the fact that every day that you're driving, there's going to be one of those days where you kind of just wish, oh, you know what? I just wish I could supercharge right now. Yep. So I'm just saying, I think this thing has been great. I don't know how we would have done it without it over these past few months.
I totally agree. And yeah, it's so nice. It gives you such peace of mind too. There was a time where I drove around my Tesla and I had a level 1 charger in the back every single day. And then I kind of gave that one up, and all I had was the level 2 adapter, right? So I could charge it at J1772. And then recently, I haven't done either of those, right? I'm just like, if I need to charge, there's so many superchargers near me, I will be able to top up if I need.
That's a really good point, because I mean, one of our family members was just buying a Tesla, and they're like, do I need to buy the mobile connector kit for $250? And I was like, I don't know, actually. I used to say, of course, you must have one.
You must, but you must have a backup. But in the 7 to 8, 10 years, I've had an EV for 10 years now, I have never, ever, ever had a situation where I've been like, I need to level 1 charge. Can I borrow an outlet? I've never needed to do that.
Me neither.
And I mean, that's going through Leafs and other, non-Tesla EVs. Right. But like with a Tesla, there's never been a question.
Right. So yeah, I feel like this does answer everything. The Tesla Supercharger network is just keep getting bigger every week, and it's just awesome to be able to use it. And if you can't use it,
then you're missing out.
Then you're missing out. So it's like, that's why I'm saying,
and you
like,
shouldn't be missing out.
Don't miss out just because of one little connector adapter.
The car companies have already made the deals with Tesla, so you may as well be using it and taking advantage of it now.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on Now You Know. We hope you enjoy these episodes. We'll see you next time on Now You Know.